right. My name is Nate. We got Jim here behind the board. He is he's the man setting this operation up. We love it. This is the Problem Reaction Solution Network. We have a guest today, our first guest. This is our second episode, our second show, so we're excited to have our first guest of the series, of the show, and his name is Andrew Owens. He is the frontman for the band Ashes from Stone, and he is based out of Minnesota. Check this stuff out. Andy, how you doing, brother?
Good. How you guys doing?
I'm doing good.
Wonderful.
Man.
All right.
Andy, tell us what is your where people can look up Ashes from Stone.
You can look us up at ashesfromstone.net, where you can find all our music already free streaming. You can get merchandise up there, and you can find out about the band in the bios. You can find us on Facebook, /ashesfromstone.com. You can find us on iTunes, Amazon, pretty much YouTube. Anywhere that you can find music, you can probably find us.
So it would just be for YouTube, for example, like YouTube/Ashes from Stone.
Yep.
Right. Okay.
Just type it in the search bar, something you'll find us.
Right.
Spotify also is a big one, so if you want to listen to us and then hear some good bands.
So you got a YouTube page, a Facebook page people can like and subscribe.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Got all that. And besides that, we're always playing shows out, so just take a look at the page and you'll find out when the next show is going to be, and we look forward to seeing you guys in the crowd.
All right. Well, that's good.
But more importantly, we brought you here because you're active in the conservative movement.
Yes, I am.
And that's very important to you.
So you would classify yourself as a conservative. I was about to say liberal, but a conservative, right?
Yep. In about 2011, I joined the Tea Party movement.
Okay.
And then I joined Overpasses for America. So what we did was we waved signs up on overpasses to try to get Obama impeached. We were really angry about how Obamacare is being pushed through, bills being passed in the middle of the night while Congress was out on vacation, and just things that seemed completely anti-American. And then I realized the Tea Party network, it wasn't exactly what it had been sold to by liberals to me. It was taxed enough already. It was a way for us to go against the Republican establishment that had always told us one thing and done the absolute opposite. Party that's supposed to stand for lower taxes, that was always raising taxes.
Right.
A party that was supposed to stand for, trying to protect us and keep us safe at home, yet they wanted to spend most of their time running guns overseas. So we tried to join this group that was going to tell the government enough is enough. You work for us. And I did that for a while, and then I got a little upset in 2012 when we had the biggest congressional win for conservatism in U.S. history, and we laid down and took everything that Obama wanted to do since. Okay. So I realized the party that I was standing for was once again not doing what I wanted it to, not doing what it said it was going to stand for, and that's what I hate the most. If I'm going to stand by a party, it's got to stick by its. And here's one thing you can give the liberals: as much as I can't stand their ideology, they stick to their guns. They always do. They always stand for what they say they stand for, and you wonder why they're gaining so much support. So all
right. Well, to get the beginning of the episode started off, and that's a good rant there. That's what we do on this podcast is we go on little rants and prove some excellent points. And we're not really going to have anybody on. If we ever have a guest, we're not going to ever have anybody on that doesn't have some extremely good points and legitimate points, so we probably won't ever have any liberals because they are just the ones that are way the hell out there.
Maybe it'd be a good idea to have some
I'd be all about having a liberal on, but it's just okay. So everything I just said, forget about. Anyway, so so again, real quick, I just want to get it out there so the listeners understand again what we're about, since it's only our second episode. Jim and I decided to get this going. Problem Reaction Solution is I believe I might mispronounce it, Hegelian dialect. Hegelian dialectic. It's comes from, it's very old. It's a very old idea and term, and what it means. Have you ever heard of it? Hegelian dialectic.
That sounds familiar.
Okay. Problem, reaction, solution. The people that are in charge, the people throughout history for centuries, for thousands of years, since we've had these social experiments, what we call governments, whether it's a democracy, republic, a dictatorship, anything, socialism, communism, monarchy, any of it, right? You have these rulers, the rich, or the people that are. It doesn't matter. No one else is rich besides the rulers, the people, the kings, the people in charge, right? The governments. And we've gotten better over time. That's what our system is now in America. But anyway, back to the history of it. It comes from these rulers saying they want to talk about. Here we go, right here. It creates a problem. Okay, manufactures a reaction, provides a solution. These are the people that go into the government and get into these positions of power, understanding this scenario, understanding this narrative, and they intentionally. It is not incompetence. It is not ignorance. It is intentional throughout history. It is human nature, and it has been intentional throughout history that people of power will do these things to not only keep their power, but what it is called libido dominante, meaning, have you ever heard of that? Libido dominante, meaning the lust to dominate. Okay, the lust to dominate is human nature just as much as it is to breathe, and it's something that is for most people unconscious. But when they get this position, and it happens in just even regular jobs for people. Someone becomes a manager at a Burger King, and they get a little bit of a power trip. I worked at Applebee's for years, and people got into a manager position, and it's just their attitude changed, and it wasn't where they were like, the king, but it was just, hey, I got a little bit more authority now, and it's everywhere, and I think anybody can understand that. And that's what happens with people that get in power, and that's what we're basing this off of. But we're not trying to create any problems. We're going to be talking about problems, and we're going to be talking about reactions that are in the MSM, the mainstream media.
Yep.
And that's everybody's got to remember, especially conservatives. I really want them to remember. You have all these conservative guys talking about the mainstream media. Hannity talks about the mainstream media all the time and how they're horrible.
He is the mainstream media.
Fox has the biggest ratings out of all of them by a long shot. Mm-hmm. They are the mainstream media. I used to watch Fox a lot, and then I decided that I need to start growing up, and I need to learn what life is really about. And these media figures, none of them, not on the left or right, are telling the truth, and they're all bought off. I'm not going to go as far as Alex Jonesing it and saying they're CIA operatives. Alex Jones says, what's his the guy in CNN, the gay guy, what's his name?
Anderson Cooper.
Anderson Cooper's a CIA operative. No, so be it. If
Anderson
he is or
Cooper's
not.
I'm just kidding.
Anyways, no. Anyway, right. So back to what.
Are you surprised?
No.
Back to what we're about here is understanding these ideas and human nature, and understanding that no matter what authority position is granted, people take advantage of it. It is the human nature long before America was ever founded. I'm going to cite in a little while here, we'll go back to it, but I'm going to cite some history from the founding of the country about some of our founding fathers that violated some of the same founding fathers that signed the Constitution, violated the Constitution years later, and violated some of the most important ones of freedom of speech, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to come back to that later. I'll tell the story, but we're this network here. We're looking at the problems of all angles, and we're going to talk about reactions in the mainstream media and why they're wrong. Most of them are always wrong, and that's why internet. I'm so excited for our future because I want to be optimistic about things because the internet is providing this alternative media that I truly believe is going to be the future of media. This mainstream media will die off. I truly believe it. And so after that, we're going to talk about solutions, real solutions. We don't really have any power here, but our power is our voices, and that's why we're doing this podcast. And the solutions that we talk about are futuristic ideas. I like to be a futurist and think about, I mean, there's some insane stuff. We talked a little bit about it last time, but there's some insane stuff about what our future is going to be like. We're going to be able to grow limbs back. You know, they just researchers at the Mayo Clinic just this past week discovered. Did you hear this story? Discovered a way to expand the lifespan of mice by 35%. Do you know what that means? They said in a couple of years they would like to start doing it on humans, and they have it. And there's no side effects. There's no repercussions so far for these mice. It's just a really interesting situation. Yeah, check this out. It's insane, dude. So it's just a really interesting situation that we live in. So what we got going here is we're going to talk about the solutions that we have potential, and we just want people to wake up and understand. That's why we're getting this podcast out on all different formats. And this isn't so much what we're going to be talking about today. What our topic of today is conservatism versus libertarianism, government versus no government.
And why libertarianism and not liberalism or socialism or communism?
Can I just address a couple of things you said first before we even get into that?
Yeah.
And I'm really looking forward to that conversation actually, because that is one of the longest standing debates in conservatism, and it never ends.
Right.
But first of all, you talk about the history of rich people controlling and people just overstepping their authority. And yes, it is part of the basic human spirit that when one person gets control, they most likely are going to misuse that control over another person. But even when we haven't had rulers, when it's just been anarchy, there's still been that one person who's going to want to go down the street and take what that guy has because he has it and this guy doesn't.
Sure.
So there's always this human need to have what you don't have, what another guy has or another woman has. You know, you want to have what somebody else has. It's a greed.
Sure.
It's greed in us. And
do you want to go hit some of those quick, and then we'll get into that?
Yeah, and then,
that one's going to be what we'll spend most of our time on.
Yep.
What you're talking
and
about.
As far as Fox goes, yes, it is part of the mainstream now. For a long time, the only mainstream sources were NBC, CBS, ABC, all those kind of channels. CNN, I believe, only came around was the 90s.
Right.
But
CNN was 80s. CNN was the
80s,
first one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of these mainstream news sources that were only reporting one side of it for a long time. Fox was created to finally report the other side of it. So that's why they were mostly attacked for a long time. But it gained them a lot of support really quick, because there's a lot of people that were sick of being told one side of the story and they wanted to hear the other side of the story. It wasn't very long though that Fox itself got corrupted, because big money corrupts and power corrupts.
Right.
So when you have the highest ratings in the country, you're going to want to keep those ratings, and it's always it's a nonstop struggle between all those guys. And the last thing I just want to talk about, you're talking about the medicine for expanding life.
Yeah.
That they just talked about giving to rats or mice.
He's got that right here. Right.
That will never be given to the American people, because of the fact that they're actively trying right now to depopulate us.
Yeah. Right. Well.
So I don't see how. I mean, that's in legislation. They're working with the UN to do that. It's about conserving the planet under sustainable development.
Right, and that's one of the glim parts of. Unfortunate parts of.
You just mentioned Agenda 21. That's another 12-hour discussion.
Right.
Yes, it
exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, there's a lot of You're right. There's a lot of unfortunate things. The thing that we talk about is, like I say, unfortunately, Jim and I, with this little podcast, we don't have a lot of influence. Maybe 70 listeners or something for our first episode here, maybe a little bit more. But the situation is yes, there's a lot of problems, but we're trying just to kind of look at the things that could be. Talk about ideas that could be. We don't want to focus. We want to focus on problems, but we really want to focus on solutions.
Yeah.
And a lot of people out there, and even in the alternative media, there's a lot of fear mongering. But there's a lot of guys that are.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys that are very, very good at what they're doing. They propagate a lot of fear in certain things, but they're very good at what they're doing. A lot of guys I like is Christopher Green. You guys should really check him out. Check Christopher Green out. That's AM TV on YouTube.
It's Green, Green, or
Yeah,
with
I
an E
believe,
at the end.
yeah, something like that. But just look up AM TV, Alternative Media Television on YouTube, AM TV. And let's see, Greg Hunter, he's really good too. He's USA Watchdog is his website, but he's on YouTube. I watch all these guys on YouTube.
Are these the guys that have their laptop screen open and they just go from story to story and narrate?
Some of them are. That's We Are Change. Look at that one. Check out We Are Change. Seriously, and these guys are the ones that are innovating what is going to be the media where people get real information. As long as the powers that be don't shut down the internet, which again is Agenda 21, and that's getting into a 12-hour discussion.
Well, you guys are talking about creating solutions, and one of the biggest solutions is to have a message that people want to listen to. Now, one of the biggest problems I run into online or when talking to people and trying to have these discussions is somebody will pull up facts that they have online, and it doesn't matter what the source is, how legitimate the source is, that person is not going to trust your source. If they're already stuck in their way, you bring up an article online, they're not going to care about that. They care about things that they can see visually, like a video. You want to make a video about something. That is a message that's going to get out there. You want to do an interview with somebody so you can actually hear from their own mouth. That's going to get out there. But showing them words on a screen, it's never going to work. It's not a message that's going to create solutions very quick.
Right, and that's, again, the influence that we have is it'll hopefully grow in some sort of way, but we're just doing this because we think it's important to talk about these type of things. What's going to come of it? Unfortunately, with the society we have, the Kardashian society, and
Oh God, that's
the
another
society we have
discussion.
is just unfortunate. Yeah, it's really unfortunate. But so that's, I don't know. Jim, you want to throw anything in here? You got anything you've been thinking?
No, I mean, let's kind of get into talking about libertarians versus conservatives.
Yeah.
Because for the most part, libertarians and conservatives are political allies. For the most part. But like you said, there's a few points that they differ on, and where they differ greatly. Military intervention is I think, probably the biggest one.
Right.
Yep.
So you said earlier you're conservative. I'm sorry to hear that. I'm joking. Tell me why. We'll just get right into it here. Tell me why you love government, and I'll tell you why you're wrong.
Typical cocky libertarian question to start it off, huh? So first of all, I do not love government.
I know.
And most conservatives, do not love government. Actually, some of us are a little bit, I guess you could say, we should probably be locked up in an institution by how much we hate the government. But to this point, there's a reason why we hate government. Government has killed more people in world history than anything, even religion.
Right.
Governments kill, and they're never held accountable for when they're killed, or the people they kill. They're never held accountable for poisoning food. They're never held accountable for taking control of our medicine and all that crap. But when you're talking about the difference between conservatives and libertarians, the number one thing we differ on, it's not on our hatred for the government or how we want the government to be smaller. It's an interventionist or non-interventionist foreign policy. That is the biggest thing that we differ on. Now, conservatives believe, kind of like you, where we believe that we shouldn't be running guns overseas. We shouldn't be involved in other people's civil wars.
Sure.
We shouldn't be toppling dictators. But at the same time, we do believe we should have a strong presence around the world. We're in a post-nuclear society. We're in a society where all the major countries in the world all have nukes. And we're in a constant stalemate with those countries. And we'll never be able to revert back to before that time until we all decide to destroy our nukes, which is just not going to happen.
Right.
It's not going to happen. I mean, you're going to have the rest of the countries decide, but there's going to be that one country, North Korea, is not going to want to give it up.
Right.
Iran, once they have their nuke, which is going to be soon, they're not going to want to give it up.
Right.
China's never going to give it up. Russia's never going to give it up. But maybe the European countries in America will, and then we're just going to be left holding our dicks in our hands while they take us over pretty much at that point. So what I want is I want us to have a foreign policy that makes intelligent decisions on the ground of whether or not it's going to have an immediate effect to our country. and our allies. And we have allies overseas. One of the biggest things that we differ with libertarians on is our support for Israel. We completely support Israel, and that's maybe the more Christian ideas that we have ingrained in us, the Judeo-Christian values we have ingrained in us, but we believe that Israel is a very sacred land, and the Palestinians also believe that. But when you look at the difference between the two, you have, if Israel were to lay down their weapons, Palestine would come in and would kill everybody and take over the country. If Palestine were to lay down their weapons, there would be peace. So when you have the difference between those two is astounding. Now, when we talk about being involved overseas, we need to help Israel because it's just surrounded on all sides. It's the only democracy in the Middle East. If there was democracy across the Middle East, there would be a lot less suffering. We all agree with that. But you can't get those people to change. You can't. So we're, once again, stuck in a stalemate there. Pulling everybody back home is only going to allow it all to fall apart. It's a very, very strict balance we have to keep in this
Do you think
world.
it's gotten more stable or less stable in the past, 16, 17 years? Well, even longer than that, 20. When did we go? When did Clinton send troops over into Desert Storm? 91?
It's 91, 92. Actually, 91 was Bush Senior.
I guess I can't really find a starting point for when our country's meddling, started in the Middle East. Let's say 25 years.
I think it mostly started when
It's when they figured out that there was a shit ton of oil over there.
it started after World War II, when the Jews were leaving the Holocaust camps, and we decided as these allied countries to send them all to their homeland in Israel and kicked a bunch of Palestinians off of it. We knew that the Jews had been there before the Palestinians a long time ago, but just to go in there and say, hey, you guys leave now, was kind of a pretty fucked up thing to do, I guess. Right. But where did they go? We didn't want them here in America. FDR sent a whole ship of Jewish immigrants who had left Germany when the Holocaust was going on. They had left Germany. They came to our shores. They were turned away. They had to go back to Germany to face their death camps because of that.
Right.
Now we have people today like Trump who's talking about, well, we need to block these immigrants from coming in because they could be a possible threat. Nobody talks about how we've done that before in history when we thought people might be a possible threat. The Jews weren't a threat.
Right.
These people are threats.
So they were actually here. We sent them away.
Yeah. We sent them away because of racism ingrained in our culture, and it's one thing that's always been in this world. It's an anti-Semitic belief.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I don't know, anti-Semitic meaning against Jews, of course, for anybody that doesn't know, any listeners. Jim, could you real quick on a side note look up the military expenditure on out of our America's total military or total budget, annual budget, out of all of its spending? What is
15%. I was looking this up this morning.
Military? Sure, I thought it was a little higher.
Yeah. Let's see here.
I heard the other day it was 47%. I guess you can't.
I've heard that 50% too. It is.
Yeah,
I wish I could just shoot it over the screen here.
Right. I've heard the other day. It's hard to trust a lot of things. But on a side note, while Jim's looking this up and getting our facts straight, one thing that America had a fear with was, and it was like what, I don't know, 14. It was early 1800s, like 1802. I don't know, something around that time, right? John Adams was president. He.
Great man, by the way, but probably the first person that wanted to expand the government.
Right. He was a big government guy for sure. So what happened was they had, what they had a fear was. What the government was saying that they had a fear was fear of the French. Did you ever hear this one? Did you ever hear this propaganda news? It was from some of the guys that founded the country back in the day, right? So anyway, they pushed this thing that Americans should be fearful of the French because they're going to come over because they had open borders. It was like, come over, hey, we want you to come over here, become a citizen, be free. Let's hold on before we talk about that. Become a citizen, be free, right? And they said, listen, we're going to create this, we're going to pass a piece of legislation. It's going to be called the Alien and Sedition Act, right? Have you heard of that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I actually have.
So what it is is they said, yes, we have open borders. We want you to come over here, prosper, settle, be free, start up, be your own person, start your own business. But we got a couple things. One of the clauses said, if you come over here and you're French, you can't. Not only do you have to wait for 14 years to become a citizen, because they had a fear of the French at the time. It was a pretty scary situation. The French terrorists, I guess. They said you got to wait 14 years, but for anybody, not just French, for anybody that made fun of the government, basically is what it was. That's not the words they used, but that criticized the government. Okay, the presidency. They could be indicted and charged. Okay, pretty weird, right? So here's what happened. Matthew Lyons, a congressman from Vermont, he referred to John Adams as his rotundancy. John Adams was a middle-aged man, and what happens to a lot of middle-aged men? They get a little bit bigger waistline, right? So anyway, he referred to him as rotundancy. John Adams indicted him, had him indicted, and threw him in jail. Pretty fucked up, right?
Yeah.
So what happened, real quick, what happened with the story, Congressman Matthew Lyons, he ran for re-election, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And won from the jail cell. Something that Chicago politicians will know something about, right? So anyway, he ran for re-election from the jail cell, won. By the time he got out and was elected official, Thomas Jefferson was president. And it was all good. They weren't at war. Natural rights were respected. Government didn't throw people in jail for freedom of speech. So question, how could one of the founding fathers who signed the Declaration of Independence, one of the guys who they say is the father of the Constitution and the Republic, John Adams, how could he violate the law that says Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech, the First Amendment? How could he do that? Answer is because of libido dominandi. It's the lust to dominate. Even the people that are the sternest, the most fearful or fearless of freedom fighters, okay? Like John Adams was, and he was a freedom fighter for the revolution. You're still so. Another question, okay? What if one of us three, Jim, Andy, or Nate, we had a revolution, and we get the whole country together. We have a revolution in the country, and we get freedom, and we go back to the founding of the Constitution, right? The beginning where the government is supposed to actually respect rights. Mm-hmm. Well, the government that always starts off the smallest, which is what ours was, not the size of the country, smallest size, but I'm talking the what is supposed to be limited government. Whatever government always starts off the smallest, the most limited, always ends up the biggest. And I think we can all agree, look at where the situation we're in today. You know what I mean? That's obvious. And one thing I just want to, a side note, I think that we agree more on more things than we would disagree. And I think, and my personal belief, my theory, I want to write a thesis on this, is that everybody is libertarian. Everybody is an anarchist. Mm-hmm. They just haven't understood that. They just haven't found that out yet. They just haven't realized it. So, real quick, to wrap up here, what do we got here, Jim? Let's go to this.
Can I say a couple things about John Adams real quick?
Yeah, you sure can. I just want you to remember the idea that it's human nature for people to become corrupt, and it's something that if we decide we need a central authority, that it's going to happen. It doesn't matter,
First of all, we established government because we knew that human nature, at its heart, wanted to be corrupt, and we needed to have a way to restrict people in certain ways. Let's say you had let's take the Wild West.
See, that's where we disagree, though, is restrict people in certain ways.
First, before I get to that, I'm just going to talk about John Adams real quick.
Yeah.
John Adams was a very interesting character because right after the founding of the country, John Adams spent most of the time in Congress. He was the one guy that nobody really wanted to talk to. He was the head of, I think it was the Speaker of the House at the time, and he spent most of the time in Congress trying to rename the presidency as His Royal Highness the Majesty, or His Majesty the Royal Highness Majesty, or something nuts like that. I mean, the guy had lost his mind, and so much to the point where when he was Washington's vice president in the beginning, Washington refused to have him in cabinet meetings because Washington thought he was a joke. He didn't want to deal with them, and this is something that happened with our founding fathers in the beginning. A lot of them disagreed with each other. The majority of the northern colonies didn't even want the southern colonies to be part of America because of slavery.
Sure.
And they didn't want slavery to be a part of it, but they knew that they would not win the Revolutionary War unless they had the southern colonies.
Right.
They knew that fight was going to have to keep going after, a long time after, because in the Constitution, or the way that they had written it, Declaration of Independence, so whichever way you look at it, both of them pretty much were stating that all humans had the right to freedom. They had the right to be independent and to do what they wanted to without a government or.
And you do understand that the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence were written about 16 years apart.
Yeah, they were.
Right, and the problem with that is I have a theory that I go off of, that the Constitution, I could argue, is actually a step back from freedom. It's a step back from liberty. The Constitution put in place a federal government, which is
to regulate those freedoms.
Regulate what is people need to understand the classical definition of regulate. It is meant in our founding fathers' day to keep regular. Okay, so it was supposed to be to make sure there is commerce in between states, right? Mm-hmm. Make sure there's commerce for foreign relations, right? But not to regulate, not to regulate everything under the sun. This is a thing that people do not understand. Right. Okay? You got there's so many different things that I could go off of with that. I actually don't want to get into how much regulation the government does. The examples are not necessary. Everybody can think of 100 examples. Let's look at it this way, okay? It doesn't really matter what the central authority or what the arguments now, with the philosophy that I've gotten to, the arguments that I've came to, I look at pretty much every, and I hate using terms because I truly believe, even liberals, I believe that humans at heart are anarchists. They just have not realized it yet. The thing about it is they got to realize this philosophy. There's a philosophy behind it. It's not just, I hate the government and there's a police state and man, I want freedom and I hate the state. I want minimal government. I want rights restored. It's not that idea. That's not the message. It's a lot more than that. It's a lot more deep. But the thing about it is, Leif and I were talking about this last night, and it's what it really is at the core principle, people are afraid to understand it. People are afraid to actually have real freedom from, like, for example, hypothetically speaking, if we didn't have a government, okay, let's just picture that for a second, we had no government, people would be afraid to have that kind of real freedom and responsibility. Okay, I said this last episode, with freedom comes great responsibility. Mm-hmm. With great responsibility comes happiness. Okay, now here's the thing though. People need to understand this. It's a lot bigger of a situation. It's really hard for people to grasp that idea of real freedom, but it's the most of simplest concepts. And I said to Leif, it's people being afraid to really be free. And he said, you know what it is, I think even more, is people are afraid for others to be completely free. And I think he has something huge there.
Check this. Let me add something here. This is coming from an article from pjmedia.com. And there was an article about Rand Paul suspending his campaign and talking about, why, just about libertarian candidates and all that. But there's these two sentences here that really spoke to me. They may want a sense of freedom for themselves, but aren't willing to endure their neighbor's freedom. Modern Americans will sacrifice their own rights to wield control over others, which really stood out to me in this article.
Say that one more time, please.
They may want a sense of freedom for themselves, but aren't willing to endure their neighbor's freedom.
Right.
Modern Americans will sacrifice their own rights to wield control.
This is exactly a point that I was just about to make. One of the biggest reasons that governments are always established is because you have two different types of people. You have people that want the country to be run one way, another group of people that want the country run another way. If you have anarchy, you have those people fighting in the streets.
No, you don't. You
do.
don't. No. Because and maybe in 1776 you did, but look what we have right now. We're looking
We
up
have a
things on the
government
internet
now where we can both come to the same table.
No. That argument is so irrelevant at this point, specifically because we are so connected. Here's the thing I just heard, and I love this. This is going to be my new phrase for a long time. In the new age of information, ignorance is a choice. If you do not understand these concepts, the ideas that are out there now, I want to get this out in the clear. I do not think we're going to get rid of government. I think that it's only going to get worse because I think people are extremely ignorant. I think conservative and liberals, and I'm not doing any sort of like pointing fingers. All I'm saying is I think the message that is out there that both parties, conservatives and liberals, and maybe even conservatives more. I've been a conservative my whole life, but now that I really see the big picture, okay, the conservatives are just the mainstream media conservatism is really disturbing to me. And
what specifically about it is disturbing to you?
I'm pointing that out right now. All this stuff, it's propaganda. All of this stuff is extreme propaganda. It's you understand what government is, okay? Govern.
Yes.
It comes from the Greek Latin. Govern is control. It means control. You look it up, every definition, there's a couple different definitions, but every one says control. Okay? Ment is mind. Okay? Ment is mind. There's only one thing that means. Mind control. Government. Okay? So here's the situation we have at hand. People have been indoctrinated their whole lives, not our whole lives, not our parents' whole lives, not our grandparents' whole lives, but for hundreds of years, even before this republic was established. It's been a human nature. It's been part of our evolution as we evolve and our brain gets bigger and stronger, and the more capable we are of surviving. It's because we rely, like they did back in the days of the hunter-gatherer days. It was the people in tribes, small little tribes and groups, would rely on the guy who could pick up the biggest rock because he was the strongest. He was the one that was going to get them food. So they all circled around him. And it's human nature to circle around. And that's what you just read there. People are afraid of being not only free themselves, but others being free. And here's the situation. It's human nature for hundreds of years before this country was ever founded. Tell me this. I want to circle around back to this, because this kind of points out the situation we're in that we've been indoctrinated to believe. Okay, I believe you would be of the assumption that our rights in this country come from our humanity. Whether you believe in a God or not, it doesn't matter. It comes from our humanity, and our rights don't come from our government. You agree with that?
Yes.
It's simple. That's natural law. Okay. Answer me this, please. Tell me and there's really no wrong answer, but there's one specific answer I'm looking for. What is the most important word in the freedom of speech? That First Amendment. What's that in those 4 words? The freedom of speech. What's the most important word?
Freedom?
No. Try one more time.
Speech?
The. Why? Because it is recognizing that it precedes the government. It is something. The thing, right? The entity, the person, the right is something that is there long before. How did the dinosaurs communicate? They communicated. The dinosaurs communicated some way, and it was because, number one, it was because it could. Number two, they didn't have anything regulating, saying that there was or wasn't a regulation on that, the right to communicate. It doesn't matter. You look at any other right we have, it precedes our government. Even if you have the best written document that's the best government ever, and it says the most righteous things, and it is just the most awesome, powerful construction of a piece of paper that says the best things, which a lot of people say is what our Constitution is, and it has some good stuff in there, but it regulates things. It has regulations. It doesn't keep things regular by human nature. To keep regular by human nature is to let that human be completely free. I had a baby recently, and the reason why I went from conservatism to libertarianism, even more on a radical scale, but a good radical scale, not violent radical scale, I went from libertarianism to anarcho-capitalism. I believe in no rules, which doesn't mean no ruler. Doesn't mean no rules. It just means no ruler.
Well, if you have rules, you have to have a ruler to enforce those rules.
No. Natural law says what the rules are, which is there's only one thing that really says it all, and we all learned it in kindergarten. It's the golden rule: don't hit, don't steal. You don't aggress,
Right.
and it goes for anybody. Okay.
Here's
Real quick. I want to finish up on this point before I lose my thought, and then it's you got 10 minutes, you got half hour, whatever you want.
Gotcha.
I wanna finish up on the idea that with the it all circles together, it all intertwines. Okay, whether it's foreign policy, whether it's anything, George Washington said that we can't have a standing army. That's a real reason for the Second Amendment, is not to protect it's number one is to protect yourself from you guys robbing me. Number two is to protect yourself from a government that's become tyrannical. Number three, the main thing is the founding fathers, all of them, pretty much all of them understood if you have a standing army, that's what creates wars. What happened? Do you know what happened in 1948? Just the other day, 1948, Costa Rica, they banned their army. They got rid of their whole army. You know what hasn't happened? They haven't. They're still Costa Rica. They haven't. Look it up. Look it up.
Because nobody cares what's there.
No. That's hey, that's irrelevant. That's irrelevant.
That's very relevant.
No. It's because the technology and as humans evolve and become more connected, they decide it's not worth their time or invested interests, to go and start taking over lands like they did 300, 400, 500, 600 years ago. They would take over lands. No one does that anymore. We don't take over lands and change maps on a 100-year basis.
You can't speak for the entire world when you say that.
Well,
because
yeah,
there is some peoples that really do want to take.
America and the globalists founding the ideas that these people really pulling the strings are the ones that are changing the borders. They're the ones that change the borders when all these other countries were already established in different ways. And there's the idea behind the interventionist thing, behind the conservatives say we need this standing army to have a military, is a really big false myth. How much did we got here for this military budget?
Okay, we're coming back from Tangent Town.
Right. Before we go to that, think about this idea. How much do you spend? Okay. On annually on a self-protection.
Just waiting for my response.
I'm giving it to you. I'm giving it to you, dude. I just want to real quick ask, how much annually do you spend to protect yourself from terrorists coming at you every day? Well, you know how much the government spends? We got it right here. It's a ridiculous
$6,000 I paid in taxes last year, so you take the percentage of how much that military spending is out of my $6,000 in taxes.
$1,500 a person if we have 350 million people on this continent.
Okay.
Yeah, I did the math earlier. So, what we got here, what we're looking at, and I'll post a link in the show notes, is mandatory pie graph with mandatory spending, discretionary spending, and interest on the federal debt. Discretionary spending accounts for 29.34% of the United States spending, which is $1.1 trillion. Now, military spending comes out of the discretionary spending. Military spending ends up being 53.71% of that $1.1 trillion. So $598.49 billion, which actually surprised me. I was thinking it was like about 50% of like our actual spending, which it isn't. But then it kind of gets kind of all convoluted and confusing as you go down here, because some of that is actual tax revenue, some of it's revenue from trust funds, and others is borrowing. But either way, if you break it down, it ends up being about 15% of the federal government's budget, which ends up being about $1,500 a person. If you were to spread it out equally, which we know doesn't happen.
Sure.
All right, you guys ready for the conservative response?
Yes,
to this?
I want the conservative response, please.
Okay. Well, first off, the biggest thing with borders and the reason we established borders wasn't just because we wanted to seclude ourselves off from other people. Well, that was part of the reason. Part of the reason was we wanted to preserve our cultures and our ways of life, because there's other people in other places that wanted to destroy a certain culture and make it their culture. And there still is those people to this day. Plus, another thing was we wanted to prevent the spread of disease across borders. And now when we had the Black Plagues happening in the UK, they closed their borders off. They wouldn't let people leave and they wouldn't let people come in, because they didn't want the disease that they're trying to eradicate to get any worse from other people coming in, and they didn't want the disease to spread any further from going out. So what happened was they closed themselves off. we still have those borders, and it's really hard to eliminate those borders when you have people like the Muslim Brotherhood out there, which they're in their charter says that they want to spread Islam to the rest of the world and kill all the non-believers. And they have a lot of power. They have a lot of power, and this is not something that is made up by your mainstream media. This is something that they have written down in their charter. This is something they chant in the streets. Now, maybe we have fed this. Maybe we have made it worse. But the truth is, it's still out there. Now you have places like Costa Rica that you were talking about. Costa Rica decides to eliminate their standing army. What happens if Brazil or whatever country is close by decides that they have something that they want? Probably won't happen because Costa Rica is not a very rich country. America is a rich country. Okay, if we didn't have borders, if we didn't have a standing army, it wouldn't be very long at all before you'd have either Mexico trying to get their land back that they sold to us or that we've taken. And they've wanted that they call it the lost territory. They've wanted that land back for a very long time. You have the Russians, which, God, they've just been waiting for so long for us to fall apart so that they can finally take over. The Chinese already pretty much control our economy. It's only a matter of time before they control our military.
Sure.
What we have here is we are already ingrained in a society that has established borders, has established governments, has established laws. To remove those laws is to leave a whole lot of different cultures and a whole lot of ways of thinking all just scrambling.
No, you don't just lose it all overnight. You do it as you localize it from the top down. You start from the top down and do a orderly, as Adam Kokesh says, orderly dissolution of the federal government from the top down, and you localize.
We're facing two ways right now that this can go. You have your sustainable development, which we don't want to get too much into it, but that's one way that they want to go about it. They want to create this world that you're talking about, a utopia where we all share everything, we all share all our resources. But you know what they're going to do is they're going to establish a one world government on top of all that.
Who's
the
they?
UN.
Who's they?
The UN.
The UN. Okay. Who's the people behind the UN?
All the biggest countries in the world. America.
Biggest countries or biggest donors?
Supposedly, I guess the biggest donors you'd have to say, because I don't think China is as interested as they... And Russia backed out of it.
So that's a crux of the problem that we have, and why. Again, this is not in any way offense to you personally. This is just aimed towards the arguments that are made, which are old arguments. I believe they're all irrelevant because the libertarian philosophy, the freedom philosophy, is not a political philosophy. It's an anti-political philosophy. It's not about getting people that are having some sort of government. If in my opinion, okay, and I think this is just an easy concept, if you advocate for even small limited government, you're advocating for being governed. Okay, what happens when a country comes over and they want to take over that country or invade that country? They're saying, well, look at these people. They like being governed. Let's go over there and govern them, like their country, like their leaders are doing. Let's govern them. Okay, it doesn't matter. Like, for example, okay, these arguments, you got to understand. You got to understand something really core at the core. What they said back after the Civil War? Well, who's gonna pick the cotton if we don't have slaves? Well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the answer is. That's the thing. A lot of people think they got all these answers and stuff. Answers to solutions. You know, we need solutions for the problems. But the thing about it is, it doesn't matter. I personally don't pretend to have the answers for what a collective of millions of people are going to do as a whole when they're completely free to decide. I don't have the answers to pretend.
Neither
but here's
of
the
us
thing. But here's the thing. I can tell you one thing that is a myth, is that people still have this paradigm thought process. They have this thought process that is built back in thinking that we live in an age without the internet. Still, we live in an age where people. You do know that we live in the most peaceful time of all of human history, where you're less likely to be subject to violence by your fellow man ever in human history. We have more.
I don't know where you're hearing that, because I don't believe
that's
that.
100% fact. That's 100% fact.
What was that again?
We are less likely to be subject to violence in human history ever by your fellow man. In all of human history, not just governments. Look back to whenever. Here's the thing, dude.
We have a giant Holocaust going on in the Middle East right now.
We have more institutionalized violence than ever. Okay, that is a fact.
You're
also.
right.
We have, and that's what it is. That's the difference. That's a distinct difference. You got to understand that there's a very big distinct difference. You never go. I've never been mugged in my life, dude. I've got 31
I have.
years. Okay, well, that's unfortunate.
I know.
But Jim, have you ever been mugged?
Very unfortunate.
I have not.
Okay.
How
it's-
much you guys been out of the state?
What's that? No, out of the state. No, hold on. I want to get the. You got to understand real quick. There's something very fundamentally wrong with the thought process of thinking that we need. It doesn't, like, for example, any argument you ask me, well, who's going to build the roads? Who's going to build the infrastructure? Who's going to collect money for kids that are being abused by their parents and we need to help them? Who's going to collect money for kids that need dental work and their parents are too much of a scumbag to help them? Who's going to collect money for foreign interests, that so we can protect our foreign interests and have some sort of militia or military presence? Who's going to collect money for all this stuff? Any question is here's the thing. I don't have the answer exactly, but I have one of my solutions is that people need to open their eyes to is it doesn't matter. It doesn't make it right to give some sort of entity like a government, whether they're small or big, it doesn't matter. It doesn't make it right, any more right, to say that we need to give a collective few the right to make decisions for something that one or two people might, even if it's one person that doesn't agree with it. That's wrong. That's just wrong. That's not human nature. That's me aggressing to you. And you know what it is? It's the government having a monopoly on the initiation of force. And that's all it is.
Here,
if you don't, real quick, and then you rebuttal.
Yeah.
I'll shut up for a little bit. One last point. There's 3 different types of models in this country, in this society, to earn money. Number 1, the inheritance model. God bless you. You were lucky enough to have someone pass away and they give you a bunch of money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, and I think you'll agree with all these. Number 2, the economic model. You go out there, work by the sweat of your brow, you earn a living. That's what we all do, right?
Mm-hmm.
You go out there and you work every day. And for the record, some of the most happy people in the world are blue-collared workers that do that. So that's something to be said there for people to think about on a side note. Number 3, the mafia model. Give me your money or else. It's a protection racket. What is the model out of the 3 that the government goes by? The mafia model.
Give me
your money or else. Or else is an important part to remember.
It wasn't supposed to be that way, though.
Well, what happened, though? What happened? And what happened because of the Constitution.
Yeah, you're right.
We the people, voted in these people. How about this notion? Have you ever heard this one? Maybe you saw me post it on Facebook. People say, if you don't vote, you don't have the right to complain. Bull effing shit. How about if you vote, you don't have the right to complain. Because you are the people. We are the people. Our parents, generations before us, are the ones that keep falling for this shit of that we're going to vote these people in and they're going to be the ones that are our saviors. Ronald Reagan, he was a big conservative guy. People say he was one of the small government guys. You got so many quotes from him and all this that are great. Dude, there was so many things that he did that not only violated the Constitution, but that implemented more bigger government policies. The drug war is one of them. Okay, and I think we can agree we don't even need to talk about it. I think we can agree that drug war is bullshit. So just remember that, please. Is how are we gonna we're gonna just keep voting and allowing this thing? I think if you do vote, you don't have the right to complain because you're the ones that keep putting in the same people.
You're right. So you get to this point where nothing is changing. That's because you have this establishment on both sides of the aisle that representing just one belief system, and they pretend to be part of I'm the lower government, or I'm the give the people free stuff that they need. But both of them are really only interested in one thing, and it's having more control and more power over the people.
Right.
Every once in a while, you get somebody who comes in who is against that, and you'll know who they are because they're attacked by both sides of the aisle. Mm-hmm. What I believe is I do believe in a limited government, but I believe in a slight government just for the one fact that there is certain people out there that their belief system, they think that they need to kill me in order for their belief system to be able to work. Now, I need somebody to be able to have a certain order in society so that that person can't just come in, shoot all my people, and take over my land. We have a society now where people can't do that. They can't just come into my. They can't come. You can't come on my property, kill my family, and take my shit. You can't do that. But in an anarchist society, or a society without any government at all, you would be able to do that. Now, maybe you'll get groups of people that are, we're going to do the right thing. We're going to protect our neighbors. Is that really more efficient than what we have now, though? Is that really as efficient? And look at what we've created in this capital society with a slight government. For a long time, when the government was minimalized, you had Coolidge, right? Coolidge came in after the Depression. And people don't talk about what really ended the Depression. He minimized government. He decreased government by 50%. Decreased government by 50%. We were getting taxed almost 90% on every dollar at that point. That's what was destroying people, because the stock market crashed. The government felt it was necessary to take that much people's money. Coolidge came in, decreased the government, lowered all our taxes to almost being non-existent, and guess what happened? We boomed to becoming the #1 country in the world by the end of World War II. We were the head of the economy. We were the bright, shining light of innovation. We have so much more technology now. You could talk to somebody on the other side of the world, where you couldn't do that before. I can go see foreign countries, and I can go to that foreign country, and it only take me half a day to fly there, or maybe a day to fly there, and we didn't have that ability to do that before. Right. So yes, with this capitalist system and with a slight government to regulate that system, we create and we innovate and we increase, but at the same time, we both have the same problem. We have a problem with a government that oversteps its authority. Well, when it runs out of money, you can just go take it from the people. Every once in a while, what was it? I think it was either George Washington or Thomas Jefferson that said it, the tree of liberty needs to be refreshed from time to time with the blood of tyrants. Well, whether that be metaphorical, whether that be real blood of tyrants, right. Sometimes there needs to be a revolution where we can decrease government and remind them who is in power. A free market capitalist system creates, and you guys wouldn't even, probably wouldn't disagree with me there, it creates the most prosperity in the world. Yep. But you have to have a free market that is not regulated out of control to the point where where people are leaving to go to other capitalist societies, and then your country falls apart.
Yeah, but when you have regulations, you don't have a free market.
You're right.
It's impossible. And FYI, we've never had capitalism in this country.
The reason they set up...
you understand that? We've never had capitalism in this country.
How do you guys feel about monopolies?
Well, there's two different kinds of monopolies. You know the two different types of models?
We started regulating because we didn't want to have monopolies. We didn't want to have people that would go into the free market system and take out all of their competition so that the smaller guy couldn't get up. Mm-hmm. So we set up that regulation so that the free market would be a fair market for everybody.
Well, it's not a free market, though.
Didn't that just destroy it?
No,
Shouldn't we just allow monopolies, because that would be a real free market society where if a guy's company is good enough to knock out all the guys lower on, let's let it happen.
Right. There's two types of monopolies. One, coercive monopoly. That's what governments have, pure and simple. That's what businesses today have had. That's what businesses have had for a long time. And on a side note that relates to that, what came first? Big government or big monopoly? Big government or big business? And we all like capitalism and free markets, so we know big business isn't necessarily a bad thing. Mm-hmm. Big government came first, long before this country was ever founded. Number two, real quick, you have when it pertains to that, and now I'm kind of losing my thought here, brain fart. When it pertains to the monopoly situation, you got a coercive monopoly. That's what government has, and that's what they allow big businesses to have. The government allows themselves to have the right to say that they have the right to give the big business to have those monopolies. In a free society, an anarcho-capitalist society, which is anarchism, and I want to establish for anybody that might forget, anarchy is an, without, or no, and then archy means
no government.
Ruler. Doesn't mean without rules. So anyway, in an anarchy-capitalist system, you have a market monopoly. You have a market monopoly and a coercive monopoly. A coercive monopoly is based on the initiation of force, and that's what government has on everything, especially today. A market monopoly is only based off of excellence. You can only survive off of excellence. Look at Angie's List today, okay? You have Angie's List. Mm-hmm. You have these great review sites where you can find out the best business, so you don't not only get ripped off, you get your stuff in the mail, you get the best product or service that you're asking for and what you're willing to pay for, And why is it people think that we're still able to? Everybody's going to get so hurt, and we need to protect people. That's a conservatives back the idea that we need to protect people, especially
From their businesses going
from the businesses and the military aspect. Okay, Penn Jillette, real quick. You said this. You said something earlier. You're worried about people that are just gonna want to kill you in the street. Penn Jillette said something. He said said someone asked him one time. Well, if we have a society with no government, then we're going to just have people running around killing and raping people. He said, you know what? I'm going to rape as many people as I would like, which is none. I'm going to kill as many people as I like, which is none. I don't like doing either.
That's good for him, but there's still people out there that do.
But you got to understand that's where the natural rights, the right to bear arms, again being the most important word, it precedes a government because firearms preceded the American government. The firearms were invented before our government, right? So the right to have weapons, the right to have a sword to defend yourself, or a handgun, the right to have those precedes our government. It doesn't make it any more right to say we need someone to regulate others. See, that's the thing, like you said, Jim, that was an interesting thing you brought up, is people are afraid of others being free. Real quick, Andy, I want you to be able to get some of your points off. I want Jim to throw a few things in here because he hasn't said a whole lot.
Well, I don't want it to be like two libertarians dogpiling.
No, not at all.
Because this is, the idea is just to have a conversation.
Right, and that's not what I'm looking for by any means. You haven't said much. I want you to be able to say something. Whether it's
like
rebutting
Sean Hannity, and then you start yelling, and then Sean Hannity all of a sudden cuts the mic of his opponent.
No, he does the whole we have so many Americans out of the labor force, and blah, 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 and he goes on that whole rant that's probably written down right in front of him about how bad it is. It's like the same thing every time. Like, dude, do you say that in your sleep? Is that...
I apologize if I am not abiding by my own format here that I said earlier.
It's okay. Let me tell you guys about one thing right now, and this is a big win for us. People that want to have control back over the government. They've been trying to take our guns away for a while. Have you guys heard of a man named Cody Wilson?
No.
Cody Wilson just had a big win for us on that front. Cody Wilson created you can actually look up. There's an interview with Glenn Beck that he did, and what he did was he is a 3D printing company that he owns. He created schematics to 3D print guns, and he put it out on the internet.
Right,
he didn't ask for money for it.
Right.
He just put it out there.
Right.
And he said, now that it's out there, it can never be taken away.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Anybody in the entire world that owns a 3D printer now can just go and enter in this code,
right.
And it'll make them a gun, and this gun works.
Right.
Mm-hmm. They will never be able to take guns away from humanity now.
Right.
That's the solutions. That's how you win against government.
And that's the stuff I'm looking for this podcast, those solution-oriented ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And you're 100% right. That I actually really like that example because that goes off of so many other examples.
That's real politics.
That's not real politics. That's real freedom. And again, freedom. The message of freedom is anti-political. It's not political message. Mm-hmm. It's an anti-political message because political. I don't remember the exact definition, but it's something that's like parasite, allowing a parasite or something. Literally, it's disgusting. I don't understand why
you took the definition of politics or definition of...
I did actually quote
politician.
I did actually
politician.
I was quoting Cody Wilson and what he said in that interview.
Mm-hmm.
He did said that what I just did was real politics. It was creating a solution. It wasn't talking about a solution.
I disagree with him on that. I think what he did was put an open source format out so anybody could see it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And anybody could go and download it and use it themselves. And that right there, dude, that right there at the core is anarchy. It's saying, hey, I'm gonna do this without asking anybody permission, and I'm just gonna do this. That's what no ruler is. Mm-hmm. No rules is a completely different thing. It's a completely different aspect. If people were to respect others' natural rights, it's
What the hell kind of definition is that? A person primarily interested in political offense for selfish or other narrow, usually short-sighted reasons.
Well, that's the human nature, bro.
That is just a one-sided view of a politician.
No,
it really is.
That dude, I'm telling you,
a politician is somebody who's.
I don't disagree with that, though.
I don't disagree with that, but if you want to look at the real definition, it is a person who is hired as a representative, for the people to go and argue on their behalf. politicians at their heart aren't supposed to be corrupt, but we have today are corrupted politicians.
Yeah, but Andy,
we should have people like, think about Jesus, right? Jesus was what politicians should be.
I think Jesus
walked around and he helped people.
No, Jesus was not what politicians should be. He was not a prophet, and he was not a holy.
And he was the people's voice against the Roman government.
No, some politicians probably believe they're the son of God, but that's not the case. The situation we have, dude, is the argument that you're arguing, when it comes down to the core, is the principle you're arguing for is that you're saying we need to govern others. We need to. Why is that people believe that? Why is it that we've been raised our whole life to believe that status quo? Maybe is it just maybe possible? Humor me for 1 second. Is it maybe possible that we have been indoctrinated to believe that idea and that theory, and maybe it's wrong?
No,
maybe
it comes down to a basic psychology. You look at how people think. Some people make their decisions based on fear, and some people make their decisions based on trust.
And I believe the people that believe in government think that we need government
because
are
they're
basing
afraid.
it on fear.
They're afraid that their culture will be overtaken by another.
And
it really is.
That's a weird thing in today's age of information. Again, remember, in today's age of information, ignorance is a choice.
Well, when I look
how can you think? How can you think that the government is the one that we need to turn to initiate force?
I do not believe the government is the one we need to turn to initiate force. I believe the government is the ones that we need to turn to have national defense against being attacked from foreign shores. Now, I'm not saying that I'm not saying that millions of Americans with guns isn't going to be a hard thing to take over.
What did the general say in World War II when he said, someone asked him, why didn't you attack America?
Be a gun behind every blade of grass.
Right.
But we're in a post-nuclear society, like I said.
Well,
so who's going to be watching the nukes?
You know, something Stefan Molyneux said. Have you ever heard of Stefan Molyneux?
Oh, no,
you should really look him up on YouTube.
Yes,
Stefan, MOL, Molly, Neau, Mollyneau.
X. There's an X in there.
So he's like he's French then, or French Canadian.
Yeah, I think he's from England originally, but
Ireland, then England, then Canada.
Right.
Canada.
One thing he suggested, he's an anarcho-capitalist, and I like a lot of his stuff. One thing he suggested was you could still, in theory, have a society where you don't have a government and you have a nuke still to protect yourself.
In theory.
Yeah.
But it's never been tried.
Well, okay, how about this? With that right there, that statement right there, I don't have much proof that a society without government won't work or will work.
You could have the same problems you have now.
I have a whole shit ton of proof that
this
government does
working.
not work.
You're right.
Okay?
You're right. We always come, and this is where this debate always comes to. You have a theoretical society, and liberals are trying to do the same thing. They have this utopian society, right?
Yep.
They're this theoretical Tomorrowland. They call it in the new Disney movie, that propaganda film, I call it.
Sure.
Where they believe that there is this elite, intelligent group of people, college educated, that think they know what's best for society. And therefore, they're going to change society to create a utopia that they believe. Now, we have anarchists on the other side, which I empathize with more. I understand why you guys hate the government. I hate the government, too. The government
it's not so much about hate. It's about a fundamental disagreement.
Fundamental disagreement with the need to govern ourselves.
Fundamental disagreement for the need to govern others.
You're right.
Others. It's not so much about me by any stretch of the imagination. It's others. That's
why
what people are afraid of.
That's why I can empathize with your side a lot more, because the liberal side, where they think they know what's best for us, that's governing to an extreme.
Right. They're just crackpots.
With you guys, you understand the government is the bad guy. But I think that a government works perfectly when it is held accountable by the people. We have lost our ability to hold our government accountable.
But what is holding it accountable to? We elect these officials who place laws that write legislation, and
why don't we have civilian oversight?
If they pass legislation, we don't have the right to go in there and say, hey, you guys are. We do have. It's our duty to go in there and say, hey, you guys are out today. Not through a congressional hearing. You guys are up today, but we don't do that. And why is it? It's because the government has the monopoly on force.
They also have the monopoly on thoughts, ideas, what is socially acceptable.
So why is it that people have such a hard time believing that a society without government would ever be possible.
Because
they have the monopoly on thoughts.
You go back to what I was talking about, monopolies on businesses. You had to start with conservatives, and I agree with that, because we believe that the smaller man was always getting trampled by the bigger company, and then we needed somebody to come in and be and fight the bullies.
Right.
In order for everybody to have the ability to achieve wealth and prosperity, we needed to have somebody who to stand there and say, "Hey, you can't kick down the small guy." But that was a bad idea, because what happened was
You're picking the winner there.
You're picking the winner, and it was one of those things that was done for a good cause,
Right.
and created a whole lot of problems because of it. What if we had a monopoly, like now we're talking about your theoretical society, where monopolies are allowed to take control? Would we not still have people that are poor and being downtrodden because there's still a monopoly that's taking control of the market, which is natural free market?
That won't happen. That won't happen, and it would not happen. After time, okay, here's the thing. Here's where the thing I think you keep missing my point on is that argument, what you just said, remember that, it's totally irrelevant now because we have the internet. We are communicated. We are connected. I'm sorry. We are connected, and we can communicate in such ways that would make that impossible.
So you're saying because where we are right now, technologically, that this could actually happen without government.
It's
because we are where we are
right
now, the progress that we've made, that now we could go forward without a government.
Right. That's right. And again, it's a theoretical situation because most people have a status mentality, which is the main thing. And I've thought for a long time. I think I'm glad in the last day or two now that I've been coming to this conclusion. I thought for a long time the state of mind was that we need a government to protect us and our rights. But what it really is, a state of mind, is we need a government so others can be controlled. So others can't be free, because I'm afraid of others being free. Mm-hmm. That's something very interesting. And yes, Jim, that's exactly right. I think it's a possible thing that is possible, but will it ever happen? And maybe not in our lifetime, because people are just in such a statist state of mind. Mm-hmm. But yes. The internet. Look at the justice system. One of my big arguments with anarchy, for example, was the justice system. How could you have courts and have people and have something fair with all this type of stuff, right? Well, you know what? I don't pretend to have all the answers, but I do know that people can figure it out without giving an entity to use force. We can figure it out nowadays because we're smart. We're connected in many ways, right? Mm-hmm. Like if we put our minds to it, like after the Civil War, they put their minds to it. If you would have told one of the guys in the Civil War, "No, man, I'm for the Confederates. Dude, I can't lose. I got a big farm here. I need this cotton picked. Yeah. I need these slaves. I'm for the Confederates. Hey, man, I'm from the future. Guess what? In 100 and few years, you're going to have these huge monster machines that look like Transformers, and they're going to be rolling through your field, and they're going to cut your work in half by 50-90%, and it's going to be insane." He would have looked at you and probably pulled his gun and said, "Get off my property," and said you're a crazy alien.
Get off my lawn.
Right, you won't believe it. But you can say the same thing today. How would you do it without a government? What if you had someone come to the future and said, "Hey, man, guess what? In 100 years, you guys don't have a government. And guess what? It's because people respect other people's rights." Isn't that crazy, dude? That's insane. No one would ever believe it, dude.
And you still have a fundamental difference in our opinions on what is a right and what's not.
Right. Well, right is not stealing or hitting, or not aggressing towards another.
And then some people believe that like, let's say you have your poor people, they see this guy who's rich, and they think, well, it's okay to steal from that guy because that guy didn't earn his stuff. Well, you don't know whether or not that guy earned his money.
It doesn't matter who it is. It
Well,
doesn't.
we do have that system right now,
Right. We do.
We do.
According to government.
where it's legal to steal from rich people.
Right.
Yes, it
that's
is.
right.
Whether they earn their money or not,
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
It
It's
doesn't
not
make it
good.
any more right if the guy's corrupt and he's rich, or if the guy's corrupt and he's poor. It doesn't make it any more right. What makes it right is that you have a system that is based off of a free market where people come to a consensus in a connected era. They come to a consensus and say, "Hey, this guy's corrupt and he's really poor and he's a burden on our town and he's an asshole and he's corrupt. And, hey, this guy's really corrupt and he's a rich man and he's a burden on our town." You'll have people are smart nowadays if they apply the technology, you know.
Bathroom break quick.
Yeah, go ahead, dude. Jim, what do you?
All right, we're back from a short break here. So basically, Nate wanted me to add something, but basically what I want to add is actually I have a question for Andy. He's like, so I guess in my ideal scenario, well, not ideal scenario, but with the military being overseas and us getting involved in all these conflicts, it doesn't look great on the military's end. Like if you're an advocate for more military, you know, I can say, well, what about all these countries we've been at war with in the last 15 years, and that doesn't look good. Do you ever think it would be possible for us to just bring all of the troops back home to actually defend our homeland here? You know, whether it be like it's not like we can have a standing army on the actual, in our country, but just bring them home to train here, to work here, instead of being almost everywhere, because we have troops stationed damn near everywhere. Is that true?
Well, the short answer is no.
Okay.
But there's a lot more to it.
You understand where I'm coming from, right?
Yes, I do. I'm ex-Navy. Spent a little time in the military. I understand the way that our troops are deployed around the world. Some of them I do not agree with. Well, we already have National Guard here at home. We have Coast Guard to defend the borders. We have probably, I think it's like 27% of our fleet, or a little bit more than that, is usually sitting on our shores, which is more than enough to defend us. Now, we have certain presences in other countries, like the demilitarized zone between South and North Korea.
Sure.
We've been there since the Korean War. Now, if we were to leave that demilitarized zone, war would probably break out immediately between North and South Korea. Maybe they should, but at the same time, you know what North Korea is like. We all do. Well, as much as we know about them, they are a shithole of just starving their own people and government corruption, overbloated government corruption. South Korea is one of the greatest democracies in the world now. It creates a lot of great technology. It has a lot of great workers, a lot of very, very great economy.
Okay, I just want to real quick throw one thing in, and then I'll shut up, I promise. The difference between the two countries that I always think of is North Korea has refused to allow a central bank to come in, and South Korea has allowed a central bank.
Okay, now look at the difference between how the people are living.
I understand that, and so yeah, I guess that makes sense to have a central bank that rips people off and eventually will collapse the system. That makes sense.
And eventually will collapse the system, but look at how much prosperity and wealth it's created in the meantime.
But the ends right now justify the means.
Okay.
But in the ends, the real ends down the road, will they justify the means?
So just look at them by comparison then. Let's look at them by comparison. Let's look at the country that didn't have the centralized bank and the country that does have the centralized bank. One of them is always going to be filthy and bad to live in. The other one is going to be nice to live in for a little bit until it goes to shit. So when you look at the two by comparison, I'm obviously going to go with the centralized bank out of the two. Now, if it's always going to be corrupted, if it's a system that's always going to be corrupted, obviously we need a new system. But the system should not be looking at countries like North Korea and thinking, well, they didn't have a centralized bank, so let's do what they're doing. No. I mean, the communist dictatorships are terrible. We know that system doesn't work.
I think we can all agree on that, yeah.
So what about a centralized bank that has civilian oversight?
Well, does any of them have civilian oversight?
No, they don't.
No, they don't. The government has the oversight on them.
Like, how hard is it for us to audit our
Are you
Fed
sure?
right now?
Because our Federal Reserve is owned by what? Like a conglomeration of
Of bankers is what it's owned by.
world banks, yeah.
Yeah, right, bankers. Banksters, gangsters, or wait, I'm sorry, banksters. Gangsters, banksters, same thing.
Well, as you're looking that up, just one more thing on the interventionalist. You have times that we had like World War II, but we set up an established presence in Germany. And when we set up this established presence in Germany, got the Berlin Wall taken down. That's one thing that you can give to Reagan. He did really well. We do good things overseas. Now, sometimes that is overshadowed by the bad things we do overseas. But every country in the world that has any power at all is involved in some way. They have dirty hands. It's not just America.
Sure.
Any country that has a centralized bank, dirty hands.
Sure.
But still, the communist dictatorships that don't have a centralized bank, they got dirty hands too.
Sure.
So what's the constant out of all those?
I don't know. You tell me.
An overbloated government that has its hands too far in the people's pockets.
So what's the answer then? Keep voting for different people to keep doing the same thing? Is that the answer?
You gotta hope that eventually you're gonna have a representative that can finally make a real change. Someone that is not part of either side.
Okay. Now I've changed my whole philosophy. Okay, so I'm just gonna make sure to vote this year in 2016, and I'm gonna be all good to go.
Okay,
we got Ted Cruz or Donald Trump, right?
Or
as one libertarian that I heard the other day, he said, "I'm a libertarian. I think Bernie Sanders would be the best choice." You know what Bernie, the saying, BS. That's BS means, right?
You know, there's
That's
whole
Bernie Sanders. is what it means.
there's a whole effort on the Bernie Sanders camp to say, okay, well, Rand Paul's not running, so all you libertarians, you share a lot of interest with Bernie Sanders. You should vote for Bernie Sanders.
Right.
Which is absolutely crazy.
I know. Yeah, well,
It
it's I'll tell you right now. You guys got to understand. You guys got to understand, please, that the politicians. This is a game. These guys mean nothing. This is a system that has been set up to benefit the people that are in charge, the people that own the Federal Reserve. That last line of those first two lines, profit-making institution, okay? Those last three words, profit-making institution. I'm not saying profit is bad.
Well, it says it's not. This is coming from the Federal Reserve's mouth. The Federal Reserve System fulfills its public mission as an independent entity with government. It is not owned by anyone and is not private, profit-making institution. I don't know if I exactly believe that.
No, I don't either.
No,
you guys artificially set at interest rates. You took all our gold. You printed out paper money. You set what it's worth, and you won't even let us audit you. Mm-hmm. So this is not something that is within the government. It's not something that's under civilian oversight, and it's something that has screwed up our monetary funds.
And you guys understand how the Federal Reserve was founded, right? Have you read the book?
Yeah, FDR.
What, the Creature from Jekyll Island?
Creature from Jekyll Island?
I have not read the book.
Okay, I have not read it either. I have the book sitting at my house. My dad borrowed it to me, and I have paged through it. But I know the history pretty well of it. And it was on Jekyll Island. There's about 13 or 14 of these big banksters, Rockefellers, Morgans, all these guys, and
they decided to kill America.
And well, no, they decided to buy America. Actually, recently afterwards, there was a news line in a newspaper that said, millionaires or billionaires, one of the two, buy America, literally. And that's what happened. People need to understand. There's a saying from I think it was one of the Rockefellers. I don't know for sure. I can't remember, but he says, I allow people to live on my planet Earth. This planet.
Who said that? Rockefeller?
This planet. I don't know if it was Rockefeller. I think it was all Rockefeller.
Sounds like Marx to me.
I allow people to live on my planet. The only reason why they live here is because I allow it. Okay, and it's the situation. The situation we have at hand is it doesn't matter who you vote for. Folks, audience that's listening, it doesn't matter who you vote for. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm sorry. I know I go on these rants. I want Jim to get in more things that he was.
I got a question on the whole interventionist thing, and then Andy mentioned the central bank, or maybe Nate mentioned the central bank and the and all that. Do you think that you've heard the theory that we've gone into war with the last few countries that we did in the last 15 years because they were not part of a central bank?
Yeah.
What do you think of that? So, like, I pulled up this article here. In the year 2000, there were 7 countries without a Rothschild-owned central bank.
Now there's 3.
And I'm sure you guys have seen this. Afghanistan, Iraq, Sudan, Libya, Cuba, North Korea, and Iran. So now we've gone into, in the last 16 years, we've gone into Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya. So what would be left then? Sudan, Cuba, North Korea, and Iran. So we're and we're making deals with Iran right now. We lifted the sanctions there. We've lifted the embargo on Cuba. So we might be like working to get them on the whole centralized bank thing.
Well, it's really weird because we got a Republican Senate and Congress. That's really weird. I guess the people that we're supposed to vote for, that we just keep having hope and change for on the conservative Republican side, is just, well, you know what? I'm sorry. Let's make sure we vote this year so we can get that right guy in, that new Reagan, get the guy that's getting the Reagan coalition together. Sorry to throw that in. I just had to get this pointed out, that this falsity. People are on a false idea that we got to keep voting for these people that keep making our problems.
You know, Ted Cruz is one of the few people who showed America that they didn't need government for a very short time. You guys should really look into that. He had the government all shut down just because they wouldn't do what was right for the people.
Ted Cruz was a guy that he read Ayn Rand. He read Ludwig van Mises. He read all these different great libertarian philosophy ideas, okay? But the one thing that he hasn't done is shrunk government in any way. I know he doesn't have the position to do it, but
because he's overrun by people from the establishment.
And you know what he also said, in one of his campaign things, when I say that I'm going to do something, I am going to do it. Except for when I'm out campaigning, I can't vote for the Fed bill.
Okay, let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, I know you're probably gonna have some issues with that there. But
here you go. He co-sponsored that bill. He was one of the only people that was interested in auditing the Fed, along with Rand Paul. Both of them have always been for auditing the Fed, which would help us a lot. We really know what our money's worth, and how the Fed has screwed us over by artificially setting the interest rates. What Ted Cruz, when he co-sponsored that bill, he found out that they're going to be 7 votes short. I'm sure you know that few days before any vote has happened, I mean, people are running back and forth talking to each of the representatives, and everybody gets in their own little groups, and they're like, okay, we have this many votes, we have this many votes. They know before going in to vote who's going to be voting which way. He knew that even if he left the campaign trail, came in and voted, they still would have fallen 6 votes short instead of 7 votes short. So leaving the campaign trail to go do that wouldn't have been worth it for him if he's.
Oh, so he picks between two crucial things: campaigning or principles.
If he had voted on that, if he had voted to audit the Fed, still wouldn't have passed.
Oh, so principles, it doesn't matter then, I guess.
You know, there's only one position that he can have in the country where he can actually put that agenda forward, and that's the President of the United States.
To be fair, also on a side note, there wasn't any Democrats that voted for it. It was all Republicans. So even though I still wholeheartedly disagree with Republicans and conservatives today, in a big way.
You at least know that if there's any good guys, they're on our side.
Andy, you did just admit that he picked between 2 crucial things: campaigning or principles. And even it doesn't matter. It wouldn't have passed. You're right. But he picked between campaigning and principles.
He did.
So I guess that's what matters. I guess as long as he might get in and change things around. FYI, it doesn't matter who we get in. Okay, I'm not a mathematician, but we got $20 trillion in debt, coming up on $20 trillion in debt. We got over $200 trillion in unfunded liabilities, which is Social Security, promises, pensions, all these type of stuff. We got things that are so screwed that it doesn't matter if we got Ronald Reagan himself in. It doesn't matter if we got George Washington himself in or Thomas Jefferson himself in. You know what matters is that our country is absolutely screwed, and the fate of humanity, or at least the fate of us, I guess, is going to determine how we come back out. Are we going to come out of the rubble with saying, hey, we need to put a smaller government in place so they can allow this to happen again, or we need to govern ourselves?
Mm-hmm.
That's a question I have for people.
Well, short of having a bloody revolution to replace our government, which at one time I would have advocated for. I do not like the idea of a war in the backyard where our children are playing. I don't like the idea of us fighting against each other. So
let's bring it over there so we can see these pictures on Facebook and YouTube of kids over there dying. Like there's disgusting pictures. I'm sure you see some of the stuff.
They're strapping bombs to their own kids over there. I mean, ideologies are a very scary thing.
Does it make any sense for parents to to raise their kids to think, oh, you could go to college someday and you can have a great life someday in this country over here in Iraq or Afghanistan, when they're not even certain that their kids are going to grow up to be 18, to make it to 18, because they could get hit, even if they're innocent or if they're a guilty kid or not, it doesn't matter, or guilty family or person or not, it doesn't matter. That doesn't make it any more right. But they might not grow up might not even make it to a certain age because you have bombs that are going off all around them. The thing about it that people don't understand is it doesn't make it right or wrong. I'm sorry, it doesn't make it right if they're white, black, Asian, blue, red, pink, anything. It doesn't matter. I said Asian, that's not a color. But
it doesn't. What it matters is whether or not they're able to assimilate with other societies. Whether or not they are interested in assimilating with other societies without forcing that society to change to be the more
forcing. That's what we're doing, though. That's what American foreign policy is all about. It has been for a long time.
Because we're not the side.
We're forcing others to do. We're going over there, opening a can of democracy on their ass.
You're right.
Okay.
You're right. But, okay, I can show you. I don't
think you guys fundamentally agree or disagree on like whether or not what we're doing in the Middle East in the current, the current format that we're doing this is altogether wrong. It's just to the degree, I guess. That's what I'm seeing.
I see videos from Palestine, that they share around there, where they're teaching their kids that Jews are the descendants of pigs, and that they need to kill them.
Those people are completely idiots. So we need to go over there and stop them. Preemptive strikes.
You're right. We shouldn't do that either. How do we change an ideology? How do we get them to stop looking?
Why are we supposed to change them? Why are we supposed to change them?
Because there shouldn't be anybody who thinks that a whole race of people should be wiped off the face of the earth. There should not be any person on the planet that thinks an entire race of people should be wiped off the face of the earth.
Yes, of course not. And I wholeheartedly agree that those people are wrong and they got something terribly... some terrible decisions, some hard decisions to really think about, but that doesn't make it any more right for us to have a foreign policy that is preemptively striking people to prevent terrorism.
Peace through strength.
Peace through strength is a false narrative. You understand that Ronald Reagan is a false prophet for the conservatives, right? You understand that he was a big government guy. You understand that he campaigned for Democrats before he campaigned for Barry Goldwater in the 60s.
I understand that in some aspects Reagan was an idiot because he trusted the Democrats. Let's look at...
He was an idiot because he believed that we needed government to rule over others. And I'm not saying that people are all idiots, and I'm not obviously insinuating that towards you. I'm saying that people have this false idea that they need... I'm sorry, man, but it's the state we live in today. People truly are afraid of others being free because it means that they have more responsibility.
They're worried that they will overstep their freedom.
You said just a little while ago that you are worried about other people that are going to go crazy and want to kill you and stuff.
Want to overtake our culture.
Right. Why is that? Why are you worried about
Because they wrote it down in their charter, and that is what they believe.
So it's just one. What about the fear of the French? What if back in the day they were right and we should actually still fear the French?
The French never said they wanted to establish a worldwide caliphate.
Yes.
You know what a worldwide caliphate is.
And so you're going off the Quran, what it says in the Quran. What about what it says in the Bible?
Well, that is not what it says in the Quran, actually. It's what it says in the Muslim Brotherhood Charter.
No, okay. Well, you understand that all this stuff derives from the same stuff, which has been written over years and years and years. Mm-hmm. And the Bible, along with the Quran, and along with any of these charters that they get their information from, their religion, right, it's stuff that has been falsified over thousands of years. You understand also that human history, like people that believe in the Old Testament and the New Testament, they think a lot of especially religious fanatics, and I'm sure you're not one of these people, but they believe that humans are only been around for 5,000 years. We got evidence that show humans have been around for 250, 500,000 years. Okay, what about back then? Did they have the Quran or the Bible dictating the way their end game or their so-called caliphate should be, or this and that? It's something that has been made up. You understand also that there's good evidence showing that at one point in human history, when there was a small population on this whole planet, that there is one religion, and then a group of people said, "Hey, you know what? We can get a whole lot more control if we make make a bunch of religions."
Actually, it's not exactly how it happened.
That's exactly how it happened.
No, if you trace it all the way back, it goes back to where they've all believed in the one God, which was Yahweh.
Okay.
It was back in Africa, and then you had the very first Judaist religion starting to come out of Egypt and the Middle East, where you had the Egyptians who believed in multiple gods, but then you had the Jews who had a prophet, Jesus, or it wasn't the Jews who had the prophet Jesus. Jesus started the Christian religion, but the Jews did not believe he was a prophet. The Jews always believed that Abraham was a prophet, right? And
okay, but when is this? Like I'm talking like 250,000 years ago. I'm not talking 5,000 years ago.
Well, this is when everything changed. This is where it split into different religions. It wasn't just some people sitting in a room saying, let's create a bunch of different religions so that we can control people. No, it was one group of people that said, this is our prophet, and another group of people that said, this is our prophet.
Sure.
And all of a sudden they started fighting over each other, but it was basic human spirit of we want to explain why we're here and what happens to us afterward we die. And it's the number one fear that has always been ingrained in humanity is the fear of death. So
sure.
we all create our own belief systems on how we should live our lives and how that will give us to the afterlife and how good people are rewarded in the afterlife.
Sure.
And since then, that has spawned wars, it has spawned different governments and different belief systems, and it is really at the heart of what we believe, what is good and what is wrong.
Right.
What is right and what is the wrong thing to do.
But
and
that's
to this
one
day,
problem
there's
I have
people
with
with
religion.
a fundamental difference of opinion on what is right and wrong. You have certain Muslim groups, and I'm not an anti-Muslim by any stretch of the means. I understand the majority of Muslims are peace-loving. Yep. However, if you look at the ones that aren't peace-loving, the ones that support Sharia law, which is a dominating, one of the worst government systems that we have in the face of humanity right now.
Yep.
Those people do not want to change, and they are a very big number of Muslims. If you look at the actual number, it is the size of the United States of America. So we have a number of people throughout the world that are the size of the United States of America that want to see the Western world and freedom destroyed and replaced by Sharia law.
Right.
That is a real. And if we created this non-government system, how are we going to deal with those people? Are they going to step right in and say, "This is how we're going to live now"?
How are we going to pick the cotton without slaves? How are we going to stop these people? It's the same argument. So we need to put a central authority in place. I guess that's the difference between what we're talking about. Is you believe we need a central authority to rule, to make those decisions for a collective amount of people. And I'm not a collectivist. I don't believe in collectivism. I believe in individuality. But what I believe is, why do you have to have the 51% rule over the 59%? That's one of the problems I have with democracy. Is it still doesn't make it right. Even if it's voted upon, it doesn't make it right. Well, you're in a social contract, and if you live in this country, then that's just what you have, is a social contract. Well, I didn't sign that social contract. Actually, no one signed a social contract. Why is it that they have a right to say, well, if you don't want to abide by our laws and rules, it doesn't matter if you're human still. It doesn't matter if you bleed the same color I do. You cannot live in this country unless you live by these laws that I set for you, because I want to govern you. And the people that want to live in this country are willing to be governed. Because that's what the difference is.
Because some of us, we just do not want to live in a society that is based on different fundamental beliefs than us.
Fundamental beliefs. There's only one fundamental belief that I believe in, and that's a respect of others' rights, not the initiation of force, and respecting people's property.
Goddamn right, me too.
So,
but you know what?
So why do you believe in?
But you know what? I accept that there's people on the other side of the planet that do not believe that.
Dude, there's people in this country that don't believe that.
They do not want to respect
there's
our
people
rights.
in this country that don't believe that. But why aren't we? Then by your argument, because there's people in this country that don't believe that. By your argument, we should have military patrolling the police then, or patrolling the streets in every street in this country. Because seriously, because there's people in this country that don't believe in respecting others' rights. So if you believe that, you just said that. So by your theory, literally, dude, you understand that more people die in this country, okay, than as far as like the crimes and all this other stuff, than from terrorism all around the whole world, right? The gangs in this country and all this other stuff. It's a fact. I guarantee you that. We don't even have to look it up. You can if you want, but I can guarantee you more people are dying in this country from violence committed by other citizens of this country than there are from terrorism. And yet we don't have military policing these streets and bombing these areas.
It's because
It's because people refuse to believe that they could live. People refuse to believe they could live in a society where they don't have that kind of protection. The only protection they have is that 9mm that they got, you know? The only protection they have is that shotgun that they bought the other day at Fleet Farm, because they feel like, hey, this is the way I'm going to do it. I'm going to be responsible for my life.
Your basic violence that's committed here is somebody shooting somebody over a wall.
Yeah, they're not respecting the other person's
Somebody
rights.
shooting somebody over, I'm breaking into your house, this guy shoots another guy.
Not
because of
respecting
that.
their property rights.
What you
Exactly.
have over there is you have people coming in and saying, are you Christian or are you Muslim? And they say
Yeah,
they're
they're not
Christian, and they say,
respecting their rights.
okay, we're going to cut your
It's
head
the
off.
same exact thing. No, it's the same exact thing. They're not respecting their rights. Okay, you're 100% right. Those people are in the wrong. Those so-called radical terrorists, right? They're fucking crazy, dude. There's no way in hell you'll ever find me defending anything they ever do or say. They're effing crazy.
Well,
But
we need to
the
protect
idea
ourselves
is,
from that, don't
we need. So we should have military policing the streets in this country then. Because we have gangs that don't respect other people's rights because they don't steal.
We
your
already
wallet
have
or
military
break it.
police in the streets in this country. Haven't you seen it?
Yeah, I have seen it. Sure, and that's a whole nother discussion. But what you're arguing is, my point is it doesn't make it any more right.
No, it doesn't.
To say we need to have these things, a government, for example.
I don't think it's
to-
right that there's a giant group murdering people across the Middle East right now. I don't think it's right that the Russia's taking over Ukraine right now. I don't think it's right that.
So we should
I don't
force
think it's
people
right
in
that
this
the
country.
UN
We should force people in this country who don't believe in going over there and starting wars to pay taxes that go over there to start wars. You
Nope.
understand
I
everything?
don't think we should go over there to start wars. I think we should. Here's the biggest problem we have. We've been funding our enemies for a very long time. We fund a military complex that keeps war perpetuated because it makes money for people at the top,
Right.
and it always has been that way. There is a difference between military strength to prevent an evil way of thinking from spreading, and there's another form of military where it goes in and causes evil to happen in order for the government to be hired to go in and clean up.
But
the
what's
problem.
behind both of those is a government that's in control of it. What if you didn't have a government? What if you had you didn't have a standing army? What if you had a group of people that all understood the same idea? Like, hey, if people come over here, we're gonna fuck them up. We're gonna make sure that we are protected because we have a consensus.
What
of
happens when you
people.
get a bunch of pissed off liberals that say that we shouldn't be able to do that? They go get their guns and they go stand in the streets and try to fight you.
That's the thing is
Then we got a
this,
war.
This society is not the society that I theorize about is not a utopia. That's for damn sure because you're never going to be able to get away from evil and bad people. But it is an idea that where most people that live in this society would have an understanding. And they hopefully won't be a liberal or someone that doesn't get these principles. You know what I mean? Someone that doesn't understand the principles.
One thing I've seen from liberals lately is they have this belief that it's a white society that has done this. A white society that oppresses people. It's a white society, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And ingrained in that is a racist belief in itself. Because
Sure, yeah.
whites have done the same thing to whites
Oh yeah.
throughout the centuries.
Yeah.
I mean,
There's white slaves. There's white slaves for a long time.
Really?
By white people, you know.
I mean, the poorest. What's the poorest county in this country since the Great Depression that nobody's ever done anything about? Appalachian Mountain area. I mean, you got white rednecks with no shoes, living in shacks,
Sure.
and it's been the same way since the Great Depression.
Sure.
Why don't we ever talk about them?
Right. Right.
Why don't we ever do anything about those people?
Right. No,
Well,
exactly.
it's because of the fact that there's certain belief systems that think that people of different colors, people of minority colors, as they call them, should be babied or taken care of more than other people. But really, what is at the heart of human spirit is that every person is born the same. Every person is born with the same fundamental rights and abilities, and
course.
each of those people have to. It's meritocracy. You have to prove that you want to go out and help society.
Sure.
Now, when we come with the society that says, well, this is unfair that these people have money, these people don't, so we have to take this money from these people, give it to these people, and therefore it's going to fix all the problems. It's not going to make people that are sitting on their ass and weren't doing anything rise up above the ladder. Now, only one way when we talk about free market ideas, there's only one way that you can rise yourself out of prosperity. But there's other people in the world that do not believe in those free market ideas. They don't want people to have the freedom and opportunity to do that because they believe that wealth is evil.
Right.
Having wealth or earning wealth is evil. Even having more than the next guy next to you is evil. Now, is that an enlightened way of thinking, or is that a way that's going to regress this society? Really?
Well, it depends. It depends if you think that we need a central authority to keep in place.
I was talking to my brother the other
protect
day, right? He believes a lot like you. He says we shouldn't have police. We shouldn't have government.
No,
We shouldn't
I don't
have...
think we should. I think we should have a community officers that are there to protect and serve, not to shoot first.
Okay.
I think later, you know.
You know what? I agree with the same thing. I believe that you shouldn't shoot first and ask questions later.
And I think that it should be ran by the community, on localization. And if you have an officer that is corrupt and does something bad, you get rid of them. You get rid of them that night. You don't have hearings and go through congressional things or whatever. Well, you don't have weeks and months of hearings.
You got to be careful.
You get rid of them that night.
You don't
that's justice right there.
Get rid of them.
You don't want to set up.
You have a community meeting. You have a community meeting with anybody that wants to come, and as long as you have really good evidence,
there you go.
You have to have great evidence, and if you do, that's a great thing about
we do
cell
not
phones
judge
nowadays.
on public opinion. That's one thing that we've.
Well, unless you got a video that shows a cop shooting someone in the back running away, then it's pretty easy to say, "Hey, let's get rid of this guy tonight."
That's public opinion.
This is that's public fact when you have video that shows
video.
it.
Yeah.
That's a great thing. You're not going to capture everything on video, but most people have a lot of stuff on video now. If something happens in public, you're probably going to see it on video on YouTube at some point. And that's a great thing about the technology. Listen, I think we've had a great discussion. Jim, I want you to throw in something here to rebut both of us. Tell me why I'm wrong, and tell Andy, well, he's either right or wrong. and
that is a great definition for that, by the way. Utopia, an imagined place or state of things in which everything is perfect. The word was first used in the book Utopia by Sir Thomas More. Yeah, let's just all agree on one thing right now. Utopia will never
16. A little something behind Thomas More. He was King Henry VIII. This is 1516. Thomas More was tried by King Henry VIII for not recognizing that King Henry was the head of the church. Okay, and Thomas More, in his closing argument to the jury and the court, he said, if some people believe that the earth is flat and some people believe the earth is round. If the earth is round, can the parliament, an act from the parliament, make the earth flat? And if the earth is flat, can act from the king make the earth round?
Well, we're seeing that today,
you know what he was addressing? He was not only addressing to the jury their common sense, their understanding of common sense, because they said, of course not. You can't do that. Of course not. The king and the parliament can't change physics, but he is also appealing to their understanding of the natural law. Even if they didn't understand what natural law was, they understand it from the way he explained it, because of course not, they cannot change that. Natural law is something that has been around before humans. It was something that has been around before dinosaurs, before anything. Natural law is what is again, whether it's religious or not, secular or not, it is what says is supposed to be the way things. That's where order comes from. Have you ever heard of chaos theory? Okay, chaos theory says basically, in so many words, it says if you have complete disorder, you will have complete order, because you do not have anyone controlling what is and isn't disorder or order, and that's chaos theory, and that goes right along with natural law, and that's
once again, my good buddy, you're talking about theory, you're talking about theoretical, and I would love to believe in a world of such where we don't have to be governed, we can all take care of ourselves. But
so I'm getting close with you. I'm getting close to getting you away from conservatism.
I believe that will never happen until we have people all around the world that agree to stand up for other people's rights.
Right. Well, that's why we got the internet nowadays, and it might be closer than everybody thinks.
Well, let's hope so.
Let's hope so.
So you wanted me to add something, Nate? So I've been studying, anarchy for a little while here.
Yep.
You've kind of gotten me into it.
Yeah.
And I feel that anarchists and liberals share one thing in common. They have a utopia that they dream of.
Right.
That the anarchists dream of,
Right.
like a complete no government type deal where we
Right.
all kind of like live in our communities
Right.
and trade between communities and between people, and we have a free market, which would be absolutely awesome. I don't disagree with that at all, but I think it is a utopia, imagined place. And the liberals have this utopia where Big Brother's going to take care of everybody, cradle to
Right.
grave kind of thing.
Right, yeah.
That's never going to happen. And well, actually, it is getting closer to happening, and hopefully it doesn't happen, because I think that's, is a huge problem.
Right, right.
We're just going to end up being like the USSR. We're going to
Right.
break up, and there's going to be a country of Kentucky and a country of Minnesota.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not going to fucking work.
Right.
No.
So your question,
Andrew, I didn't have a question. I was just
Oh.
going to say,
statement. Okay, yep, keep going.
Andrew, I think we could just leave the Middle East alone. I mean, what happens if we could go back in time and just leave the Middle East alone? Okay, I mean, as far as like development, like they're not going to fly over here and take over the United States. And if the Western world leaves the Middle East alone, they're not going to take over Europe like they have been in the last 10 years, 15 years here, right?
You think?
The whole migration. I think we just leave them alone. They'd stay there and fester in their own, ideology, or maybe they would come together and think, well, the hell are we doing? Like, why are we imposing these particular laws on people? Why are we
You
why
think
are we
the
having
reason-
these people?
You think the reason for their mass migration, which is 73%
Not necessarily mass migration,
males
but-
between the ages of 20 who are coming to take over Western
Sure.
world, you think they're doing that because of our involvement in their countries?
Part of the money that we've been sending over there, right? Because in order to the way we've kind of been fighting this thing, or the way the government's been fighting this thing, is like funding one particular group to fight another group. Well, let's put in money in that group's hands, and then that particular group that we just gave weapons or money or Toyota trucks to or whatever it might be, they turn around and then they're attacking us, right? Because that's kind of the way this thing's been working since probably the 80s or something. That if we wouldn't be giving them this money, weapons, Toyotas, all this stuff, that maybe they'd still be sitting around, around a campfire herding goats thinking, well, we need to run society this way. Well, they wouldn't have the means to, attack Western societies.
No,
That's kind of my
if you go
my
all the
theory.
way if you go all the way back to the Crusades, the Crusades were fought over Muslim caravans fighting attacking other caravans in trade routes
Okay.
when they weren't Muslim. So that they've been attacking people for a very long time just because of religious aspects. Now, even if we weren't funding their enemies or bringing equipment into their countries, we still believe, based on history, that their reason for attacking us, their reason for their hatred for the Western world, isn't necessarily because we're involved over there. It's because we have a different religious point of view than them, and that they want to change us to that religious point of view. They want to convert us or kill us.
Okay.
Now, that's why we're always in so much fear from them. It's because it's never changed from them. Thomas Jefferson even said it himself back when the Muslim pirates were attacking their ships back in early 1800s. They were talking about how these Muslim pirates, all they believed in was converting or killing the people that they came across, and it had nothing to do with money or what was being brought in their countries. It had to do with an ideology. So we have to be vigilant about these ideologies, because just because we don't understand them, just because we want to have this utopia, whether it be anarchist or liberal, we think that if we trust everybody and we're nice to everybody, everybody's going to trust us and be nice back. It is not rooted in reality.
I think it is rooted in reality. It's just like anything else. Like over time, humans evolve, and they're less likely to hurt each other and more likely to live next to each other and be peaceful with each other. Humans will eventually evolve and understand that statism is a frame of mind that will become obsolete, and it will only be because people will suffer. People are going to suffer so bad, I believe, that we're going to have some sort of collapse that is going to be the granddaddy of all collapses. And I strictly look at the financial aspects of that. That's what Greg Hunter is all about here. He has some really good stuff on some guys that are really smart that get on and talk about the finances and stuff. But I believe that it's going to be because people suffer so bad that they realize, why is it that we're in this state, and this state of despair and distress hurting. It's going to be, people will realize it's governments that have done this over time. I think that's what the age of information is going to bring us.
Okay.
And there's one thing I think that we agree on is that we want to protect people, right? We want to protect people. I really do, especially having a baby and stuff. I really want to make sure unfortunate kids are helped. You know, one thing that I think we can also agree on, that we can have organizations that can do it so much more cost efficient and so much more efficient in general and be more successful than what the government is trying to implement.
I agree.
And people need to get over these in any aspects. If you agree with that, then it can be applied. That same notion and idea can be applied to anything else the government does, even protecting our rights from terrorists or big banksters or big corporations. Doesn't matter. It can be applied in every aspect. And that's one thing I was trying to get Leif to really understand. He agrees with everything I say except for, well, we need to protect people from the corporations that take advantage of them, putting cyanide in their McDonald's burgers and stupid shit like this. I know, they're not putting cyanide in their burgers, but they're putting, all these GMOs that are just horrible.
How about just don't eat fast food every day?
Well, that's one thing. That's one thing. But when you have an FDA that approves it, it's another thing. What if we didn't have an FDA and it was just built on a general consensus of people that communicate well with each other on the internet?
Yep.
We're getting to this point where we should probably call it quits. We've had a good long discussion.
We do need to wrap it up for today.
Yeah, I appreciate this talk.
Thank you very much for coming in.
Yeah, man.
Guys,
Anytime.
Andy Owens, Ashes from Stones, you gotta check him out.
Great music.
Great
you.
music, and he's on all the formats, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. You guys on Twitter?
Yeah, Twitter. I still haven't used Twitter to this day.
Okay.
I guess I'm more conservative than I believe, but
I haven't either. I should since we got this new network out.
More importantly, Problem Reaction Solution, we're on all networks. Our Gmail address, if you want to send hate mail in, please do, is problemreactionsolution@gmail.com. I'm sure we'll be back next week, or hopefully sooner than 2 weeks from now.
Yep. Jim, I appreciate this again, and Andy, I appreciate you making it out and having a good conversation. I think it was good, and there's some stuff that all these arguments, I still struggle with. I still say, well, there's good arguments to be made there. You know, and all the stuff you said is very good arguments to be made. I
appreciate you guys having me.
I just like freedom. I just like freedom too much,
I like freedom too, buddy.
We'll end it there. Andy, thank you so much again. Jim, thank you so much. I'm Nate.
Thanks for having me, guys.
I'm Jim.
And Problem Reaction Solution Network will be back next time. See you later. Rock on.